Howard Phillips Lovecraft, more commonly known as H.P. Lovecraft, was an American writer of weird fiction and horror who, despite facing obscurity during his lifetime, became one of the most influential figures in 20th-century speculative fiction. Born on August 20, 1890, in Providence, Rhode Island, Lovecraft lived a life marked by solitude, intellectual pursuit, and an ever-expanding universe of his own creation, now famously known as the Cthulhu mythos. Early life and family struggles. Lovecraft was the only child of Winfield Scott Lovecraft and Sarah Susan Phillips Lovecraft. His father, a traveling salesman, suffered a mental breakdown in 1893 and was institutionalized in Butler Hospital, where he remained until his death in 1898. This left Lovecraft in the care of his mother and maternal grandfather, Whipple Van Buren Phillips, a wealthy businessman with literary interests. Whipple nurtured young Howard's fascination with literature, particularly classical texts, poetry, and Gothic horror. By the age of 3, Lovecraft was reciting poetry, and by 6, he had begun writing it himself. His mother, however, was an emotionally unstable figure who alternated between overprotectiveness and psychological cruelty, further isolating the boy from his peers. Lovecraft was a sickly child, plagued with health issues both physical and mental, including night terrors that would later heavily influence the surreal and cosmic nature of his writing. He rarely attended school consistently, often receiving his education at home. Teenage years and early writings. Lovecraft's teenage years were troubled. The death of his grandfather in 1904 led to financial ruin for the family. They had to move from their large Victorian home to smaller lodgings, a traumatic shift for Lovecraft. His mental health declined, leading to a nervous breakdown in 1908 that caused him to withdraw from high school without graduating. Despite this, he began to find solace in writing and correspondence. Around 1914, he became involved in the amateur press movement, publishing essays, poems, and stories. His early fiction included Gothic tales heavily influenced by writers like Edgar Allan Poe and Lord Dunsany. Although these stories received limited attention at the time, they laid the groundwork for his later mythos. The Weird Tales era. In the 1920s, Lovecraft began publishing in Weird Tales, a pulp magazine specializing in horror and science fiction. This marked a turning point in his literary career. Stories like The Call of Cthulhu, The Shadow over Innsmouth, The Dunwich Horror, and The Color Out of Space introduced readers to an utterly new kind of horror, cosmic, existential, and deeply nihilistic. His concept of cosmic horror was revolutionary. Rather than relying on traditional ghosts or vampires, Lovecraft's stories suggested that humanity was insignificant in the face of vast, unknowable forces. He populated his mythos with ancient gods and alien entities Cthulhu, Nyarlathotep, Yog-Sothoth, and others that existed beyond the comprehension of the human mind. Lovecraft's unique voice combined scientific rationalism with a deep sense of metaphysical dread. He frequently used first-person narration, epistolary structure, and pseudo-academic tone, giving his tales the feel of forbidden knowledge being unearthed. Personal life and struggles. In 1924, Lovecraft married Sonia Green, a writer and businesswoman from New York. The couple lived briefly in Brooklyn, but Lovecraft struggled to find work and was deeply uncomfortable in the urban, multicultural setting. The marriage deteriorated, and they amicably separated 2 years later. Lovecraft returned to Providence, where he would remain for the rest of his life. Though a prolific letter writer penning an estimated 100,000 letters during his lifetime, Lovecraft was largely reclusive. He had a circle of close friends and fellow writers known as the Lovecraft Circle, including Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, and August Derleth, who corresponded with him and helped expand his fictional universe. Despite his literary output, Lovecraft lived in near poverty. He often revised stories for others to make ends meet. His own fiction was not commercially successful during his lifetime, and he never published a book under his name while alive. Final years and legacy. Lovecraft's health declined in the 1930s, and he was diagnosed with cancer of the small intestine in 1936. He endured considerable pain but continued to write until the end. He died on March 15, 1937, at the age of 46, virtually unknown to the public and without financial security. However, his influence only grew after his death. Friends and admirers like August Derleth and Donald Wandrei founded Arkham House to publish Lovecraft's works in hardcover editions. Over the decades, his mythos became a cornerstone of modern horror and science fiction. Writers such as Stephen King, Neil Gaiman, Clive Barker, and countless others have cited Lovecraft as a major influence. Today, Lovecraft is considered a literary giant of horror fiction. His creations have appeared in films, games, graphic novels, and scholarly studies. While his works remain celebrated for their imaginative power, Lovecraft's legacy has also been re-examined critically due to the racist views expressed in his letters and some of his fiction. Conclusion. H.P. Lovecraft's life was one of isolation, personal struggle, and unrecognized genius during his time. Yet, his contributions to literature redefined the horror genre, introducing a cosmic perspective that expanded the boundaries of fear. Through a universe where ancient beings slumber beneath the sea and knowledge drives mortals to madness, Lovecraft gifted the world a new mythology, one that continues to haunt the imagination of generations.